For eons, humanity has gazed into the cosmic abyss, whispering the eternal question: are we truly alone? We've launched our metallic emissaries into the void, straining our ears for the faintest whisper from distant stars, always assuming the answer lay somewhere out there, beyond our reach. But what if the truth isn't hidden in the deep, dark expanse of space? What if it has been here, within our very skies, all along, veiled in plain sight? The discourse surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, has undergone a seismic shift, a dramatic unveiling from the shadows. The era of casually dismissing every strange light as a mere weather balloon or an optical illusion is rapidly fading into history. This once fringe topic, relegated to hushed whispers and speculative forums, has now ascended into the hallowed halls of Congress and the Pentagon, demanding serious consideration. We now possess high-resolution footage, captured by advanced fighter jets, compelling sworn testimony from decorated military pilots, and perhaps, most astonishingly, a government that, after decades of steadfast denial, has finally conceded. There are objects traversing our airspace that remain stubbornly unidentified, operating with capabilities far beyond our current understanding. Yet, long before these modern revelations pierced the veil of secrecy, there were encounters, events so profound, witnessed by so many credible individuals, that they have steadfastly resisted every conventional explanation offered. These are not merely fleeting lights in the night sky, easily dismissed as misidentified aircraft or celestial bodies. These are foundational cases in the annals of the phenomenon, moments that etched an indelible mark upon those who experienced them and continue to challenge the very bedrock of our understanding of physics, technology, and our precarious place within the vast, enigmatic universe. Today, we embark on a journey into the heart of 5 such monumental encounters. We will revisit historic cases that have baffled investigators and researchers for generations, their mysteries deepening with each passing year. We will also explore startling evidence from the near future, from the year 2025, suggesting that the enigma is not only persisting, but growing ever more profound. These are the cases that refuse to be explained, the anomalies that tear at the fabric of our perceived reality, inviting us to question everything we thought we knew. We begin not in the distant past, shrouded in the mists of time, but in the bustling heart of modern America, at one of the busiest airports on the entire planet. A place synonymous with precision, rigid schedules, and an omnipresent, vigilant surveillance system. A place where the unexpected isn't merely unusual, it is an immediate, critical threat to safety and order. This is where our first truly unexplainable encounter unfolds. In broad daylight, witnessed by professionals whose very livelihood depends on knowing precisely what belongs in the sky. It was precisely 4:15 p.m. on November 7th, 2006, a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, a nexus of global travel. The sky above was a uniform canvas of overcast grey, typical for a late autumn day in the Midwest. On the tarmac at Gate C-17, a ramp agent, a seasoned professional accustomed to the predictable ballet of aircraft, was meticulously preparing to push back United Airlines Flight 446, a Boeing 737 bound for Charlotte, North Carolina. That was the precise moment his routine and perhaps his understanding of reality was irrevocably shattered. Hovering silently, impossibly directly above the massive jetliner, was an object unlike anything he had ever witnessed. He described it as a dark gray, metallic, perfectly saucer-shaped craft. It emitted no discernible sound, a chilling silence in an environment usually cacophonous with the roar of jet engines and ground equipment. It possessed no visible lights, no wings, no engines, no discernible means of propulsion. It simply hung there, motionless, a silent sentinel against the gray sky, defying every known principle of aerodynamics. The ramp worker, momentarily stunned, quickly recovered his composure. He stared, his mind struggling to reconcile the impossible sight before him with his years of aviation experience. Then, with a surge of professional urgency, he immediately grabbed his radio, his voice undoubtedly tinged with disbelief, to alert the flight crew inside the aircraft. His report was met with initial skepticism, but the sheer conviction in his tone prompted a closer look. Word of the inexplicable apparition spread like wildfire across the tarmac and through the nearby terminals. A group of approximately a dozen United Airlines employees, including highly trained pilots, experienced supervisors, and skilled mechanics, raced to the gate, drawn by an irresistible, unsettling curiosity to witness the anomaly for themselves. Their collective descriptions, gathered independently, were remarkably consistent. A solid, disc-shaped craft, seemingly metallic, spinning slowly on its axis, reflecting the dull light of the overcast sky. It remained there, a silent, enigmatic spectator to the bustling airport operations, for an agonizingly long 5 minutes. An eternity in the fast-paced world of aviation. Then, in a breathtaking instant, the surreal encounter was over. Witnesses watched, transfixed, as the object executed an impossible maneuver. It shot straight up, vertically, with an incredible, almost instantaneous acceleration that defied the laws of inertia and gravity. According to those who saw it, the craft punched a perfectly circular hole in the thick, unbroken cloud layer, revealing a startling patch of brilliant blue sky beyond, before vanishing completely from sight, leaving only a gaping, circular void in the clouds as its silent testament. In the immediate aftermath, a palpable sense of confusion and an unnerving official silence descended upon the airport. When the Chicago Tribune, a major metropolitan newspaper, began its tenacious investigation into the bizarre incident, both United Airlines and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, initially issued blanket denials, claiming to have no knowledge whatsoever of the event. This stonewalling only deepened the mystery and fueled suspicions. It was only after the newspaper, leveraging the power of the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, filed a formal request that the FAA's internal records reluctantly came to light. These documents included a crucial audio tape of a United supervisor, his voice clearly agitated, calling the O'Hare control tower to report the UAP, directly contradicting the FAA's initial denials. Faced with an overwhelming number of credible witnesses, all highly trained aviation professionals, and now undeniable internal documentation, the FAA was forced to offer an official explanation. Their pronouncement was, to many, utterly absurd. The airline employees, they claimed, had simply been confused by a rare, naturally occurring weather phenomenon known as a hole punch cloud, or fall streak hole. This explanation remains vehemently rejected by those who were there. A hole punch cloud, a natural atmospheric event, does not account for a dark, solid, metallic object hovering silently for 5 minutes, before accelerating vertically at impossible speeds. A United mechanic, his frustration evident, succinctly summed up the collective sentiment. stating, "I know that what I saw and what a lot of other people saw stood out very clearly, and it definitely was not an Earth aircraft." The O'Hare incident remains officially unexplained by the very authorities tasked with air safety. No formal investigation was ever launched, no serious inquiry pursued beyond the initial dismissive statement. How could a group of highly trained professionals, whose lives revolve around identifying aircraft, be so collectively and profoundly mistaken about a solid object hovering directly over their workplace? And why the immediate, categorical denial, followed by a hasty rush to close the case with an explanation that demonstrably fit none of the observed facts? The lingering questions cast a long, unsettling shadow over the official narrative, hinting at a deeper, more unsettling truth. Our next case transports us from the bustling, controlled environment of a major city airport to the vast, isolated, and often unforgiving wilderness of Alaska. On November 17, 1986, Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628, a massive Boeing 747 freighter, was traversing the skies over eastern Alaska en route from Paris to Anchorage. At the controls was Captain Kenju Terauchi, a seasoned veteran pilot with over 2 decades of flight experience, including combat missions, and a meticulous reputation. He was not a man prone to flights of fancy. At precisely 5:11 p.m. local time, while cruising at a routine altitude of 35,000 feet, the flight crew, including First Officer Takanori Tamafuji and Flight Engineer Yoshio Tsukuba, noticed 2 strange, luminous objects off their port side. These were not distant stars or conventional aircraft. They moved with an erratic, almost playful agility, shooting off lights and darting around the massive 747 with impossible speed and precision. Terauchi, adhering to protocol, immediately radioed Anchorage Air Traffic Control to report the unusual visual contact. However, the controller, after checking his radar, confirmed that their screens showed absolutely nothing nearby, a chilling discrepancy. Then, the already bizarre situation escalated dramatically. Captain Terauchi reported the appearance of a third, far more colossal object. This was what he would later describe, with a profound sense of awe and terror, as a mothership. In his official report, a document of sober professional observation, he subjectively estimated its size to be at least twice that of an aircraft carrier, an almost unfathomable scale for an airborne craft. He claimed its lights were blindingly intense, so powerful that he could feel the heat emanating from them on his face, even through the thick glass of the cockpit window. The sheer audacity of such a craft, operating with impunity in controlled airspace, was staggering. This is where the JAL 1628 case transcends mere anecdotal sighting and enters the realm of compelling, corroborated evidence. As the colossal, silent object shadowed their plane, maintaining an unnerving proximity, Anchorage FAA controllers received an urgent call from the military's Regional Operations Control Center. Their powerful, long-range military radar had painted a primary solid target, a distinct, unambiguous blip, precisely where Captain Terauchi was describing the mothership. For a brief, critical period, the object was tracked on 3 separate independent systems: the 747's own onboard weather radar, the FAA's civilian air traffic control radar, and the highly sophisticated U.S. Air Force's military radar. This multi-source corroboration is exceedingly rare in UAP cases and lends immense weight to the crew's testimony. The terrifying encounter continued for nearly an hour, The shaken crew, despite their professional training, performed evasive maneuvers, attempting to shake their silent pursuer, but the object followed their every move with effortless grace. Finally, as the 747 approached the comforting lights of Fairbanks, the object, as mysteriously as it had appeared, simply vanished, leaving the crew profoundly shaken but unharmed. Upon landing, FAA investigators meticulously interviewed the crew. Their assessment was unequivocal. The crew members were found to be normal, professional, rational, and had no drug or alcohol involvement. Their testimony was consistent, detailed, and delivered with the conviction of men who had witnessed something truly extraordinary. Yet the official explanation that followed was, to many, a bizarre exercise in obfuscation. The FAA later attributed the military radar hits to random clutter, a vague, dismissive term, and their own radar return as a split image of the jet itself, a technical impossibility given the distinct nature of the blips. Skeptics, desperate for a mundane explanation, suggested the crew had simply misidentified the planets Mars and Jupiter, an explanation that completely ignores the dynamic, close-range encounter described by the crew, the impossible maneuvers, and most critically, the irrefutable radar data. Captain Terauchi, despite his impeccable record, was grounded by the airline for a time after speaking openly to the media, a move many interpreted as a punitive measure to silence a credible witness. The JAL 1628 case stands as a landmark in UAP history, precisely because of the compelling, multi-layered corroborating evidence. You have a highly experienced flight crew, their detailed and consistent testimony, and, for a crucial period, confirmation by both civilian and military radar systems. It leaves us with a profound sense of unease, suggesting not only that there are unknown, highly advanced objects operating with impunity in our skies, but that there are powerful, unseen forces at work, perhaps within our own institutions, actively controlling and suppressing what we, the public, are allowed to know about them. The implications are chilling. The cases we've examined so far, while deeply unsettling, primarily involved observation from a distance, albeit a close one. This next story, however, crosses a terrifying, deeply personal line. It is about a direct, physical, and utterly terrifying interaction, and it stands as arguably the most famous and hotly debated alleged alien abduction case in recorded history. It forces us to confront the possibility that the phenomenon isn't just observing us, it's interacting with us, perhaps even manipulating us. On November 5th, 1975, a 7-man logging crew was finishing their arduous day in the remote, rugged expanse of the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. As dusk began to settle, casting long shadows through the dense pine trees, they were driving their truck down a secluded, unpaved road. Suddenly, a brilliant, pulsating glow pierced the deepening twilight through the trees ahead. Cresting a small hill, they brought the truck to an abrupt halt. Hovering nearby, just above the forest floor, was a brilliant, saucer-shaped craft, glowing with an intense golden light and emitting a high-pitched, almost unbearable hum that vibrated through the very air. The men, hardened loggers accustomed to the dangers of the wilderness, were utterly terrified, paralyzed by the impossible sight, all except one, 22-year-old Travis Walton, perhaps driven by a mixture of youthful bravado and an overwhelming curiosity, inexplicably got out of the truck and walked toward the hovering object, ignoring the frantic shouts of his crewmates. Suddenly, without warning, a brilliant blue-green beam of light shot out from the craft, striking him with immense force and throwing him violently to the ground. Convinced in that horrifying moment that Walton was dead, the driver, Mike Rogers, panicked and fled the scene in the truck, his mind reeling from the impossible horror. A short distance away, however, consumed by an overwhelming wave of guilt and fear, they stopped. After a tense, agonizing discussion, they decided to go back to retrieve their fallen friend. But when they returned to the clearing, both the enigmatic craft and Travis Walton were gone, vanished without a trace. What followed was a harrowing 5-day ordeal that captivated the nation. The 6 remaining crewmen, their faces etched with fear and disbelief, reported what had happened to the local police. The authorities, understandably, were immediately skeptical, their minds jumping to the most logical, albeit grim, conclusion. They suspected the crew had murdered Walton and concocted the outlandish UFO story as an elaborate, desperate cover-up. A massive, exhaustive search operation was immediately launched, involving law enforcement, search and rescue teams, and volunteers. But it turned up absolutely nothing. Walton had simply disappeared. To clear their names, and under immense public and police pressure, the crew reluctantly agreed to take polygraph tests, administered by a highly respected polygraph expert. The results stunned investigators and the public alike. 5 of the men passed completely, their honesty regarding the core events confirmed. The 6th man's test was inconclusive, but not indicative of deception. Whatever had transpired out there in the remote forest, these men, under intense scrutiny, genuinely believed their incredible story. Then, 5 agonizing days after he vanished, Travis Walton miraculously returned. He was found by the side of a highway, disoriented, dehydrated, and confused, with a small, inexplicable puncture mark on his arm. He recounted a chilling, fragmented narrative. He claimed he had awoken inside the craft, surrounded by strange, non-human creatures with large eyes, and was subjected to a terrifying medical examination before blacking out again and waking up on the road. The Travis Walton case has been under an intense, microscopic scrutiny for decades, dissected by skeptics and believers alike. Skeptics point to alleged inconsistencies in Walton's later accounts. The fact that the crew won a $5,000 prize from the National Enquirer for their story, though this was after the initial police investigation and polygraphs, and that Walton himself failed a later polygraph test administered by a different examiner, though his supporters argue it was poorly administered and that he has passed others since. It's also been noted that physical evidence such as unusual ground markings or elevated radiation levels at the site has been disputed and never scientifically verified to universal satisfaction. Still, the case began with a truly extraordinary event, witnessed by 6 individuals whose stories, under the most intense police interrogation and polygraph exams, held up. It forces us to confront a deeply unsettling, almost primal possibility that the phenomenon isn't just a distant passive observer, but an active, physical, and potentially terrifying participant in our reality. It challenges our very sense of security and autonomy. From a terrifying, intimate encounter witnessed by a handful of individuals, we now turn to an event of truly epic proportions, seen by thousands across an entire state, an event that burned itself into the collective consciousness. The Phoenix Lights incident of March 13, 1997 was not a single, isolated sighting. It was a wave of phenomena, a cascade of inexplicable events that remains one of the most widely witnessed UAP occurrences in recorded history. It was a public spectacle of the unknown. The evening began around 8:15 p.m. as twilight deepened over Arizona. Reports began flooding in from across the state, describing a massive, silent, V-shaped object moving slowly and deliberately across the night sky. Witnesses from diverse backgrounds and locations described a craft of unbelievable scale, with some estimating its length to be over a mile long, an impossible size for any known terrestrial aircraft. It was so immense, so vast, that it literally blocked out the stars as it passed overhead, a silent, dark silhouette against the celestial tapestry. Along its leading edge, it was adorned with 5 huge, perfectly spherical, amber-colored lights pulsating with an otherworldly glow. Reports poured in from ordinary citizens, from trained police officers on patrol, and even from commercial and private pilots in the air, all describing the same impossible object. But perhaps the most high-profile and compelling witness was Arizona's then-governor, Fife Symington III. A former Air Force captain and a man of considerable military and aviation experience, Symington initially and famously mocked the event at a press conference, bringing in an aide dressed in an alien costume to quell public panic and dismiss the sightings. Years later, however, after leaving office, he came forward with a stunning confession, revealing the truth. He had seen it too. He described the object as enormous and inexplicable, stating unequivocally that it did not resemble any man-made object he had ever encountered in his extensive career. His admission added immense weight to the thousands of civilian testimonies. As the colossal V-shaped object continued its silent, majestic journey across the state, a second, distinct and separate event unfolded around 10 p.m. A series of stationary amber lights appeared over the city of Phoenix itself. These lights remained fixed in a perfect, unmoving formation for several minutes before slowly fading away. The U.S. Air Force, under pressure to provide an explanation for the widespread panic and confusion, eventually claimed these specific lights were simply military flares dropped from A-10 Warthog aircraft during a training exercise at the nearby Barry M. Goldwater Air Force Range. This official explanation, while seemingly plausible for the second event, is fiercely disputed by many witnesses, particularly for the first and more dramatic V-shaped object. Herein lies the core of the conflict and the enduring mystery. Witnesses to the initial V-shaped object described a solid, structured craft, not drifting, ephemeral flares. Flares, by their nature, are not silent. They produce smoke and drift with the wind, while the V-shaped object was described as silent and moving with purpose. Furthermore, the lights of the V-shaped object were seen in a fixed, unmoving formation relative to each other, unlike flares which would spread out. Governor Symington, a highly trained pilot, was unequivocal in his later testimony. There is no way they were flares. However, it is important to note that the military's account for the second event, the 10 p.m. lights, does have some support, backed by the timing of known flare drops and some video analysis that shows the lights slowly descending consistent with flare. The problem is the conflation of two distinct events. The Phoenix Lights incident starkly highlights the massive, often frustrating gap that frequently exists between public experience and official explanations. Could thousands of people, including a state governor and numerous trained professionals, all be collectively mistaken about the giant, silent, V-shaped craft they saw earlier in the night? It forces a difficult, unsettling question. What is more likely? That a craft of unknown origin and impossible scale flew silently over a major American state, or that an official explanation for one smaller event, the flares, was deliberately used to dismiss and discredit a much larger, stranger, and more profound one, the V-shaped craft. The enduring mystery of the Phoenix Lights continues to challenge our understanding of what is truly possible in our skies. The cases we've discussed thus far are historic, etched into the annals of UAP research, their mysteries deepening with time. But our final case is not a relic of the past. It is happening right now, a chilling testament to an ongoing, escalating phenomenon. In the first half of 2025, New York State, a densely populated and highly surveilled region, became an undeniable hotspot for UAP activity, with the National UFO Reporting Center, NUFORC, logging an astonishing 66 distinct sightings reports in just 6 months. This is not a historical anomaly. It is a contemporary, unfolding enigma. This wasn't merely a random collection of isolated lights or misidentified objects. This was a sustained, undeniable wave of activity, reported consistently across the entire state. From the quiet, rural expanses of upstate New York to the crowded, meticulously controlled airspace of New York City itself. The reports detail a bewildering variety of objects, glowing orbs of impossible luminosity, massive silent triangles gliding through the night, and fast-moving metallic discs that appeared and vanished in an instant. What links them all, what makes them so profoundly unsettling, is a common, recurring theme. Flight characteristics that seem to utterly defy the capabilities of any known terrestrial technology, pushing the boundaries of our scientific understanding. Consider, for instance, the recurring pattern of reports describing objects making instantaneous 90-degree turns, a maneuver that, if performed by any known aircraft, would generate G-forces sufficient to instantly crush and obliterate any human pilot or even the most robust airframe. In one particularly vivid report from Chester, New York, on March 25, 2025, a witness described seeing 2 fast-moving white orbs that executed a sudden, sharp turn, seemingly changing their very form from brilliant lights to dark oval shapes before vanishing completely from sight, leaving no trace. Such maneuvers are simply impossible for conventional aircraft. Then there's the alarming trend of incursions into commercial airspace, a direct threat to public safety. On June 24, 2025, a passenger on a commercial flight approaching the bustling airspace of New York City reported seeing a metallic sphere fly past the aircraft, estimating it was just 100 to 200 feet below them. This chilling account echoes the O'Hare and JAL cases, highlighting a persistent, dangerous proximity to air traffic that officials seem utterly unable to explain or control. It suggests a brazen disregard for our airspace regulations, or perhaps a complete lack of awareness of our presence. What elevates the 2025 New York wave to our #1 case is its immediacy, its sheer volume, and its data-driven reality. This isn't a single disputed event from decades ago, shrouded in the mists of memory. It's a documented, ongoing, statewide phenomenon unfolding in real time. The sheer volume of reports, 66 in just 6 months, points to an undeniable and persistent presence in our skies. These reports, while not definitive proof in themselves, are crucial data points, pieces of a larger unfolding puzzle. And that data, unlike in previous decades, is finally being taken more seriously than ever before by official channels. The ongoing congressional hearings on UAP, a historic shift in government transparency, have revealed that the highest levels of government are indeed aware of these potential national security threats. The Pentagon's newly established All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, RO, is actively and perhaps desperately trying to catch up to a phenomenon that seems to be growing more bold, more frequent, and more brazen in its appearances. The New York wave of 2025 forces us to ask new, urgent questions. Why New York? Why now? Is this a genuine increase in UAP activity? A deliberate escalation of their presence? Or are we, as a society, simply getting better at seeing and acknowledging what has been here all along, hidden in plain sight, perhaps for centuries? It suggests that the final frontier isn't out there in the distant cosmos, but rather it is right above our heads, a silent, enigmatic presence in our very own atmosphere. The veil is thinning. From a silent, metallic saucer hovering inexplicably over a packed international airport to a colossal mothership tracked simultaneously on military radar, from a logger seemingly taken by a beam of light in a remote forest to a craft the size of a city gliding silently over Phoenix. And finally, to a modern, undeniable wave of activity suggesting a persistent, escalating presence in our skies today. These 5 enigmatic encounters are far more than just captivating stories. They are landmark events, meticulously documented, backed by credible witnesses, often highly trained professionals, and in several crucial cases, corroborated by irrefutable radar data. They represent a profound, unsettling challenge to our most basic assumptions about the world, stubbornly refusing to be explained away by conventional science or dismissive rhetoric. They highlight a decades-long pattern of official denial, obfuscation, and public frustration. A frustration that is only now, perhaps too slowly, beginning to be addressed at the highest levels of government. These cases, and countless others like them, are merely a fraction of a much larger, more complex mystery, a tantalizing glimpse into a phenomenon that is as intricate as it is elusive. They challenge our technological capabilities, our very perception of reality, and our fundamental understanding of our place in the vast, enigmatic universe. They leave us with a chilling, persistent question that echoes in the silence. Are they merely watching us, or is there a deeper, more profound interaction at play? What secrets do our skies truly hold? What do you think? Have you ever witnessed something you couldn't explain? Something that defied your understanding of the world? Share your own enigmatic story in the comments below, and let us know your theories. And if you dare to explore more unexplained mysteries, to peer behind the veil of the known, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We are just beginning to scratch the surface of an unseen reality.